and welcome to part 3, where I will conclude our little compact disc revival series with a kind of review, I suppose, of 3 current models, products that you can just literally go out and buy today. And they are the Cyrus CDi-XR, the Rega Saturn Mark III, and the Pro-Ject RST, with it's a transport with its accompanying preamplifier, the RS2 Pre, and you can have that as a DAC box as well, which is a little bit cheaper, which is exactly the same, but it doesn't have a variable output. So which of these 3 to talk about first, really? I think I want to start with the Cyrus, because this was the machine that both Dries and Martin chose as their favourite. And something I didn't say in part 2 was, at the end of Pierre Nicholas's session, I said to him, look, I want to point out to you that this machine here costs €2,695. And the Rega is 2,600. So with all intents and purposes, they're the same price. However, I've been playing this machine to you in all the comparative sessions with its power supply, dedicated power supply connected to it. And the power supply is €2,895. So it's €200 more expensive than the CD player itself. Now, the CD player will work fine without the power supply. Would you like to hear it with and without? And of course, Pierre Nicholas said, yes, absolutely. So I literally covered it with a cloth so he couldn't tell when it was connected and not. And I double blinded it. So really, when he thought it was connected, it wasn't connected, etc., etc. And every time he could hear a difference. Now, the problem was there was a slight volume increase by 1 or 2 dB when it was connected. Now, he didn't know whether that was happening when it was connected or when it was not connected. But by the end of it all, he was convinced that he preferred the sound when it was connected. And the blind tests verified that he had it right every single time. So what the reasoning behind it is, why it would sound better with a power supply, well, that's for the technical people to say. What I can tell you is that to make it work, both machines have to be connected to the power supply, to the mains, which is kind of unusual. And there's a link that links a multi-pin link that links the power supply to this unit. And it's not that it's just supplying a voltage to this unit. It's actually supplying different voltages, different currents to the different components. So the DAC, the servo system for the motor, for example, that turns the disc, and the mechanism. And so they're all getting, I think even the audio side is getting its own power supply. But it is not that this power supply is pushing the energy to here. This machine has intelligence built into it saying, this is how much each component requires, please supply it now. And it's quite a sophisticated thing. And I was talking to Sari Wilkinson, the designer behind it, and he was very proud of it. He said, no, I'm going to send you one of these out, Harley, because we really like it with this combination. Now, if you notice, it looks like they're a slightly different color. I'm told that's because this is obviously a display one, and this is a demo model, and they've been around at different times, and they weren't basically ordered at the same time. So don't worry, when you buy them together, they will look the same. So the big question is, would you pay €2,850 more just for the power supply? Pierre Nicholas would. He said, yeah, without doubt about it. The other advantage is that if you bought this one first, and after a few years you thought, you know what, I'd like to get a bit more out of it or whatever, then of course you could invest in this one later, but still enjoy your music without it, because the difference is still very small, but it's there. And once you know it's there, yeah, then you need it, of course. Now, the Cyrus uses Sabre DACs. It's got a separated, the power supplies and everything and everything. The DAC mechanism section is separated away with a wall from the transport mechanism, if you like. And it's very nicely designed, and it's extremely solid. And to me, it sounds really warm. It sounds very much like the Quad 67, the ones which they really found difficult comparing them. And that's the CD player I use in my private office at home, and I like it very much. So I liked this, the sound of this really very well. It's very, very musical. And yeah, just a joy. The other thing is also the remote control is rather nice. And of course, Cyrus makes sure that their remote control will operate all their equipment, so you can switch between machines. And of course, they stack on top of each other or go in racks. So you might have the Cyrus amplifier and the Cyrus DACs or whatever the other components that you want. So that's really nice about Cyrus. They haven't really changed their designs and looks over the years at all. This doesn't, it has a touch mechanism, which I kind of like actually, which is rather nice. And if you compare this with the Rega, of course, there is one thing I find a little bit annoying, that when you switch it off, it doesn't actually go off, whereas if you switch the Rega off, it switches it off. It goes off, but these little red lights stay. And it actually says in the manual a really strange thing. Cyrus actually say that you should keep them near the socket so you can remove the plugs. Well, I don't know if they're saying that for legal reasons or what, but if you've got a system like this or a setup, anything like this at home or a home cinema, I mean, the chances of being able to have these get access to a plug is really unlikely. So you would have to use servo supplied boards or whatever. So I found that a bit annoying, but for the rest of it was really, really good. There was one thing, however, that everybody really disliked about the Cyrus, even though they loved the sound, apart from Dries, who liked it but preferred the sound of the old Philips, if you remember. The thing was, when you put the CD in, you slop it in like this here. Slot it in, I should say, not slop it in. Now it's in. Great, no problem there. But when you want to remove it, it doesn't come out fully, so you can't get your finger in. And I have to sort of do this and sort of wiggle it out, because Seri Wilkinson's design is saying, right, this is going to read first time right. This is what Cyrus have been working on for years and years and years, just like PS Audio and all the rest. Make sure that transport mechanism reads everything first time right. So the last thing you want to do is get your fingers or any finger marks on the disc. Why would you make it more difficult for the machine? And so I found that really, really annoying. And so did Pierre Nicholas. But he had a quite big hand. So yeah, he said that wouldn't put him off buying it, but it would put me off until Martin came. And he said, well, I don't see the problem, because you just take it out like that, right? And you hold it in the middle, so you're not going to touch the CD anyway. And I thought, genius, of course, that must be how the designers thought of it. And I said, well, what made you think of taking it out like that? Because he just took it out. I didn't tell him anything about this. And he said, well, it just reminds me of my dad's car, the CD player in my dad's car. And that's how I always used to take the CDs in and out. So in fact, it's a complete non-issue once you've seen it. But I was getting hot under the collar about it, but no more. Now the Rega, and I really like this machine. It's beautifully made. I mean, the finish on the Cyrus is fantastic. I mean, it's just built like a brick. But this is also very nice. I like this very much. What I particularly like is just the simplicity of the front, as I say, with these little buttons. It's maybe you could say it's old-fashioned, but it matches all the other Rega equipment. Sorry, Roy, if you think it's old-fashioned. And you know, I quite like this lifting mechanism. That's also nice. But the big advantage of the Cyrus, of course, is that you can stick it wherever you like. Whereas this guy here, he needs to, I'm just going to do a Martin here to get the CD out. But this guy here, you need to pop it on the top here, click it into place, and then you drop it in, and then it starts initializing it. But I like the sound of this. I think the sound of the Rega Saturn Mark III is really, really nice. Now, it's not a kind of like sound. It's the sound that when it's in the listening room, when I've hooked it up to a really kind of warm sounding amp like the Sugden, for example, or the Deckware Torrey, you get a bit of nice warmth in the lower mids, but it's so detailed, and I get the feeling that the soundstage is a little bit more defined. The instruments are a little bit separated, and I really, really like it. And the bass is punchy, but there is something that isn't as cozy as listening to the Cyrus. And that's something to be worth thinking about. I mean, this unit and that unit next to each other are similar price. The remote control as well, very, very nice. It's got a little notch in it here, which is great, because when you were operating with your left or right hand, your finger sits nicely in here and it doesn't move around, and you get good control. And again, they call this a Solaris. It looks very nice, it feels nice, and it controls all of their pieces of equipment. But there is another big advantage of this machine. It uses a pair of Wolfson DACs, but it's also got a separate DAC. And this is what I don't quite understand about the Cyrus, because they've got a fantastic DAC in there. As I say, they're using these Sabre DACs, but they don't have any inputs. I mean, why wouldn't you? Because you've got the DAC in there, you're very proud. You could put 2 more inputs on, and then you could hook your streaming device to it, or whatever other device you want to it. So if I just turn this around for a moment, unplug it, and turn it around, here we've got a set of inputs, you know, optical, coax, USB, you can hook your computer to it. So you actually only need one box. So there is a disadvantage that this thing has to sit on the top of your system rather than you know, having anything stacked on it. Although I do think with this, you probably could, if it was in a shelf like this, you could probably lift it and get it out. The other thing I don't quite understand is why the notches are here. Is it for going from the side? I don't know. I find that a little bit fiddly, but it's nice. It's a nice mechanism. But having that DAC input means that you really can hook everything up. You can save money because you haven't got a DAC in your CD player and a DAC in your DAC and a DAC for the streamer, and you know, it just seems a bit of a shame that it's a bit of a waste, really, to have all that beautiful engineering that you can't get access to. Now, they've all got outputs, but single-ended outputs here. But the Pro-Ject, now I'm going to tell you something about the Pro-Ject. I didn't actually like it very much when I first got it. Now, the transport itself is about 2,400 euros, 2,500 euros. So the transport is a little bit cheaper than this, or roughly the same price, shall we say, as these two machines. But of course, you'll need a DAC. And then they recommend pairing it up with their DAC. Of course they would, wouldn't they? And the DAC's got like 9 inputs. It uses a pair of dual mono Sabre DACs. But it has a tube preamp out, and also you can just switch it between the tube and non-tubes. Now, the difference in the output and the sound isn't massive. In fact, it's less than massive. It's a subtle difference. And for a lot of the time, I actually prefer it with the tubes out, actually. It's a little bit warmer with the tubes out. And the sound of this, to describe this, if the Rega is lean, modern, analytical, detailed, I don't want to use the word thin because that sounds a bit negative, but it is kind of, yeah, it's it's not overly warm, put it that way. Whereas this is a nice, warm, fully balanced sort of sound. This Pro-Ject, this DAC, is somewhere, the RS2 DAC, somewhere between the two. And I think that's why I like it, because the detail on this Pro-Ject is phenomenal. If you're listening to a symphonic orchestra, all the instruments are really well defined, really clear. String quartets, the separation between the instruments, for me, is just fabulous. And probably that's why I like it. I think if I bought the Rega, apart from putting it with a Rega Athos amp or something like that, obviously that's the logical one to put it with, and there it sounds really fantastic. But, and I tried it with that, really nice. But if you put it with something like Steve Deckware's Torrey 5, it just sounds amazing, because you've got that transparency and you've got the holographic effect of the Torrey. It's just a nice combination. And the same thing happens with this when I put it with the Torrey, but I find that the Pro-Ject combination with the DAC, you really can put it almost with everything, and to me it just sounds just very nice. The remote controls, unfortunately you have to have two. You have one for the DAC and one for the CD player. Now I have the transport, but I have ordered one which comes combined a few months ago, and sadly it hasn't arrived. It's due to arrive soon. It's paid for, but it's never arrived. Now, but why did I really dislike this machine when I first got it? Well, you can see why I disliked it. You can't turn the display off. Of course you can turn the machine off, no problem. But when the CD is playing, I can't remember where I put it. Did I put it in here? No, where is it? In here, in here, in here. There we go. When the CD is playing, now, of course, it's not really an issue. And I like this because you lift the puck up and then you pop your CD on. My favourite CD of the moment, the Garland ones, which I recorded with the three girls. It was fantastic. Now you get a nice clear screen, and the big advantage is you get the metadata as it plays as well. So that's very, very nice. So you can see what's happening as it's playing along. The track data will come across along the top. In fact, I stopped it too soon. But you can't get it to shut its display off after a few seconds. So normally you would say to it, like, after 10 seconds of playing or until the next command, shut this down. You see, it says Trio Gilu and the name of the track, and that I like that. You know, I think, why wouldn't you have it? The data's on the CD, and neither of these two have that, as far as I could see. Maybe they do. Correct me if you find a way of doing it, but I couldn't find it. But the thing I really didn't like was this guy here, because this preamplifier, you see everything on it. Now it's telling me that the bit depth is 16-bit, 44.1. The PCM filter, LPF 50 kilohertz, linear phase slow. It even tells me what's not on. It shows me here that the L or whatever that symbol is off, and the upsampling is off. It shows me it's an HDMI connection, but that is on all the time, and this is on as dim as it will go. You can switch it so it's black on a white background, but I find that even more annoying. And I just don't know why, because the Pro-Ject people have designed something which is so fantastic, and it sounds great, and it's lovely to use, why they can't just make that drop off after a number of seconds. So maybe I'm just being a bit fussy. Of course, it's got a variable output. This has got the headphones, and as I say, you can buy one without that, and that's a little bit cheaper. The power supplies also are really nice. You get the separate power supplies. It works fine with the external power supplies that you get with it, but you can upgrade it to these. And again, what I like about it is at the end of the day, at the end of the session, click, 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 and everything is off. and you can go off on holiday and not think or worry about a thing. So I think you can tell already that the dual Sabre DAC on the DAC and the preamp there, I'm going to keep with the Pro-Ject, because despite the little things that annoy me, it's got balanced outputs, which the others haven't got, which I find very nice to run into amplifiers or preamplifiers that have a balanced in. I can vary the out, so if I want to make sure that when I'm switching from LP to CD that it's more or less imbalanced, I can just adjust the output if I want to. I could use headphones. I haven't done. I have no idea what it's like. I can imagine it must be pretty good. But the thing is that the CD transport itself is of such fantastic quality, and the process of opening the lid and placing the CD and putting it back on is so nice. And this unit is the same as the unit is from Streaming Unlimited that they use in the Griffin, and the Griffin's €39,000. So you know damn well that there's no way you're going to get a better quality drive mechanism than that in today's modern system. So I think that should theoretically last for decades. So my children should be able to inherit that along with the CD collection if they're interested, and maybe hand that down even to their children. And that's what I like in this world, is sustainability. It's nicely made. The edges are not sharp, but it's not fantastic like this. I mean, this is a nice thing. It's very, very tactile. The Cyrus is tactile. The Rega is typical Rega engineering with, with the bolts on the top and nicely put together, well made. And this is to another level really of just finish. And this is very, very functional. So for this, in my listening room, I'm going for function over aesthetics, and I'm very happy with that choice. Well, I hope you found that interesting. I hope I've covered everything I need to cover in this talk. €5,000 basically for all the external power supplies and the two units. Just over 5.5 for these two together. 2,600 for the Rega, which is such great value for money. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Enjoy the music.